It is a time of maximum disruption, and many successful companies are going to disappear. The fact of the matter is that a chatbot is actually quite good at answering customer support questions. And so if you are in the business of making software for customer support, obviously that has to change a lot, because the reason for your software's existence all of a sudden is dramatically lower. Change is constant. I think long-term plans right now are very hard in most places. Just getting used to that degree of discomfort is unfortunately a part of daily life.
Where does the future hold in the next 5 years? Where is the puck going?
I wouldn't make 5-year predictions, but in 2 years, I feel very confident that a lot of business and personal workflows will just look very different. So I think this is a moment of maximum opportunity and maximum threat. It is often more important to admit failure, not get discouraged, and move on. Resilience is one of the most important qualities that any human, certainly a leader, needs to have.
Welcome, Sridhar, to the podcast today.
Hey, Hassan, happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I'm very excited to have you on the podcast. This is very close to me. I worked at Snowflake for almost 3+ years. So excited to have you kind of joining us. For audience who don't know, Sridhar was, before becoming the CEO of Snowflake, started a company called Niva, which was in the search space, which is a very hard problem by itself. Before that, he started off as an engineer at Google, where his last role was SVP ads, running the whole Google ads business, which is a massive business if you know how much Google income is and how much ads contributes to that. So very excited to have you here and kind of talk about AI, Snowflake, and your leadership journey through some of the best companies in the world. So the first question, Snowflake just did its earnings call, a fantastic earnings call. As a shareholder, that was amazing for me to hear as well. But in that earnings call, you kind of mentioned that Snowflake's in the center of the enterprise AI revolution, and it's one of the best AI platform, maybe the best one, and the customers are loving it. Love to just unpack that. What did you mean there?
Yeah, first of all, most interesting companies on the planet store their best data on Snowflake. Their crown jewels. How is their revenue doing? How is customer acquisition doing? All of that stuff is brought into Snowflake because over the past decade, we have been the definition of the excellent analytic platform that there is on the planet. And over the past 18 months, what we've been doing methodically, but very surely, is build the additional components that makes all of this data AI ready. We set about it in a very deliberate way, and it's really nice to see the plan coming together. We built this component called Cortex Search. That was a world-class vector index plus traditional IR index on all unstructured data. If you have a set of documents, if you have customer feedback, if you have EVS data, I built an index on our own employee feedback, Cortex Search is amazing for that. And then we built a product called Cortex Analyst, which made the problem of going from a natural language request, a question that anyone, including a business user, can ask, into a structured SQL query. Turns out this is a really hard problem because schemas are messy, they're ambiguous, and the word revenue means different things, even within a company, definitely between companies. And then what we ended up doing was building the agentic platform that is Snowflake Intelligence on top of it. So it was a very deliberate exercise. And the hallmark of Snowflake always has been simplicity and ease of use. And we built these products to drive broad adoption. We announced in the recent earnings, for example, that over 6,000 customers are weekly users of our AI products. So there is broad adoption. And the agentic platform, which is now rolling out, these capabilities are rolling out to all of our customers. It's in public preview. But we have folks like S&P Global, for example, that realize that now they could build a native app that they could distribute to their customers, agentic applications that they can distribute everywhere else. It is that ability to take full advantage of the most valuable data with natural components in Snowflake that makes us feel very optimistic about the role that we can play in enterprise AI. And over the past 2 years, we've also been much more thoughtful about needing to collaborate, to work with other people. We have less of a Snowflake is at the center of the universe. It's more like Snowflake is a bright star, but there's a constellation of stars. And so we make our products interoperable. Agent components that we build, for example, can be made part of Teams or they can be exposed in Office Copilot. It is that combination of interoperability, all the valuable data sitting in Snowflake with the right components to make this data AI ready, consumable by AI, that makes me feel very optimistic and confident about the role that we are playing.
Okay, before we move on, a quick message from our friends and partners at Vanta. The right kind of security can make a deal or break it. Vanta's AI and technology make it easy for fast-moving startups to get ready to meet buyer expectations in just a few days. Vanta's technology continuously monitors your compliance so your deals are never blocked. And our listeners get a special $1,000 discount when they sign up. Just go to vanta.com/superhuman. That's VANTA.com/superhuman.
So you mentioned like few things, but we just love to kind of like double click on two of them. One, I think the data foundations, right? Like Snowflake, having the right data to do any AI initiative is super critical. So what are some of the key things your customers are telling you about like how Snowflake is helping them launch AI initiatives, which they may not be telling your competitors or they may not be saying, but other products in their stack?
I think the biggest piece of feedback, I was reading a bunch of feedback from customers this morning, but the biggest piece of feedback is how easy we make it. A lot of our customers have already done the work that it takes to put their best data. As I said, everything, what a user is, what a daily active user is, or exactly how much revenue you make in terms of whether is it gap revenue, is it recognizable revenue. All of that logic already sits on Snowflake. And we have cleverly done things like introduce a semantic layer as part of the core schema of data, which means that those definitions are also a part of Snowflake. Uniformly, the biggest surprise that we have is how much our customers are able to get done in one afternoon of prototyping. So much so that the standard offer that I make to every CEO is, hey, let us send over a team of 4 to 6 people over to your office and let's do a hackathon of just building prototypes, no more than one afternoon. You're going to be shocked by what the team can do on top of the data that is in Snowflake. It is that remarkable ease of use, ease of deployment, without then having to worry about things like, oh gosh, governance, because our customers have solved governance. That's what Snowflake has already helped them do. We have solved disaster recovery. We have solved replication. It is that foundation that accelerates AI and how it can be applied. And to me, the coolest thing about agentic AI is it lets you solve problems that honestly you would not have dreamt of solving before. I'll give you tons of examples. Like my personal favorite example is I was talking to the CEO of Clear, and I made the mistake of telling her that we work with lots of airports. And her next question was like, really? Who? I remembered one or two, but I was terrified. I'm standing in front of this woman. I need to give an answer. I asked Snowflake Intelligence. Not only does it give me, I said, who are our aviation customers? Not only does it give airports, it also gives me airlines. It also gives me, transportation authorities, all with like one natural language question. It is that amazing ease of use that we really want to exploit even more. And that's the feedback that we get from our customers.
That's amazing. I think like another thing which is interesting in this AI kind of change is a lot of enterprise software companies have to really rethink their stack. The cost bases are changing. There's pass through to the foundational model companies. Your margins are getting compressed. How do you see the future evolving over the next 12 months around this, and what role does Snowflake play in that?
This is this is literally $1 trillion question, because as you point out, there are many, many functions, customer service, for example, or even early sales that have a little bit of a before AI and after AI feel to them. The fact of the matter is that a chatbot that has access to all product information, all previous problems that customers have faced, is actually quite good at answering customer support questions. And so if you are in the business of making software for customer support, obviously that has to change a lot. because the reason for your software's existence all of a sudden is dramatically lower if, for example, you need 1/10 or 1/20th as many humans to solve that particular function compared to before. And similarly, things like workflow automation, which there are very large companies that are doing this, it's become clear that, again, AI models are very good at thinking through the different stages of the different aspects of how you should handle a problem and take appropriate actions. In fact, workflows built on generative AI is a hot topic with tons of startups doing exceptionally well. So I think there are several angles with which to look at what is AI going to do to enterprise software. One angle is the function gets replaced almost in its entirety by a new AI software plus humans as backup kind of model. I think that is one kind of disruption that is happening. And a lot of workflow/glue companies have to rapidly reinvent themselves because workflows used to be notoriously sticky because these are hard to create, these are hard to maintain. I think all of a sudden the ability to create and run workflows a whole lot faster is also going to change. And look, every layer is now has to reinvent itself. At Snowflake, we are proud of being the data layer. But I have to worry that things like migrations can be done a whole lot faster using AI software. I have to worry that stuff can be stitched together very easily using agentic AI as opposed to creating clean data platforms. We still think there is enormous value in the kind of data platform we provide because we provide things like infinite compute. People are migrating off of legacy platforms simply because they just can't put any more work on those kinds of platforms. And so at every layer, enterprise companies are having to reinvent themselves. And of course, the big model companies like OpenAI, they're also rapidly expanding what they are capable of. They have not reached steady state in terms of the problems that they think they can tackle. It's still early in their lives, and obviously they have a lot of money to be able to put onto problems. You're seeing things like Drive integration and Office integration show up pretty much for every AI model company that there is. OpenAI has it, Anthropic has it, Mistral just announced it this morning. And so I think there is a lot of disruption. What makes me happy about Snowflake is that there is still value in a scalable, easy to use platform for data, in a platform that makes your data AI ready out of the box. But it is a time of maximum disruption, and many successful companies are going to grow even more, but a larger number of successful enterprise companies are going to disappear or get close to zero. So I think this is a moment of maximum opportunity and maximum threat.
As a CEO of a public company, and what advice would you have for other CEOs or of high, fast-growing growth stage companies or other public companies? How should they be thinking about this?
Well, change is constant. I think that is the primary thing to understand. I think long-term plans right now are very hard in most places, except in the lowest layers. I think just getting used to that degree of discomfort is unfortunately a part of daily life. And then similarly, for critical scaling functions, at the end of the day, Snowflake's success is very dependent on our ability to have a highly leveraged sales force. Yes, we can grow by adding people into it, but if I can get 2x more productivity out of solution engineers because they can build a lot more demos, that is infinitely more scalable than me hiring 2x more people and educating them and getting communications right, so on and so forth. I think being very quick about how you drive adoption of new technology within workforces. By the way, that's a brutally difficult problem. People do not like so much change in how they do work day to day. I think both of those. What does AI mean for your product development? What does AI mean for your go-to-market? And how do you lean into these changes? I think it is super critical for high-growth startups to keep that in mind. I met a startup founder who told me that they pretty much have to redo their go-to-market playbook every month, because that's how rapidly their product is changing and how they take their product to market is changing.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So
that is the difficulty, especially with a sales force of 4,000 people sitting in 30 countries.
No, 100%. No, I think like the rapid change and iteration, like just seeing like different quarters of Snowflake's earning call, it's amazing to see how fast a company of size of Snowflake is able to adapt. One thing I'm very curious about, Sridhar, like you have run obviously large engineering organizations, massive business at Google, now at Snowflake, looked at a startup as well. There are a lot of like Fortune 1000 companies who are trying these AI agentic use cases. And there are a lot of challenges. Some of them are really nice demos of great startups which are doing great work. But as people start putting these agentic use cases in production, there are a few questions which pop up, right? One, these models are stateless. You really need memory, context in a good way for them to be part of your workflow. And then you need security. Then you need governance. Then you need to also understand what are these models doing so you can actually evaluate them. How do you think about this problem as a overall? And then what role does Snowflake play in helping companies around this as well?
These are great questions. The simplest answer I have for you is that, contrary to popular myth, AI is another tool, is another software tool. At a fundamental level, you can reason about it, meaning that we all need to stop thinking of AI as magic and more as it is a new tool in our toolbox. This means that when you deploy it into production, there needs to be a very clear idea of what are correct behaviors and what are incorrect behaviors. I joke to people that when you download an app on your phone, you have a damn good idea what you want that app to do. And you're going to uninstall that app in a heartbeat if it does weird things that it's not supposed to do. You just will not tolerate it. I tell people exactly the same attitude and methodology for AI. We have good software engineering principles that we have all evolved over 30, 40 years now. We are in the process of deploying Snowflake intelligence broadly to our sales teams. Part of what the team has to do was to create an eval data set that they can run before every iteration, every new iteration of that product internally is called Raven, goes out to the sales team. I think keeping that in mind is the most important thing for anyone that wants to deploy it. But going even further back, I would say that all AI projects need to start with business goals, ideally modest business goals. In other words, what you really do not want is a too big to fail project. All too big to fail projects fail. And so being able to iterate is very important. Before we did Raven, which is our one-stop shop sales tool, we had other previous tools that looked at things like just searched over all enablement or gave access to some kinds of analytic information. And so building bigger products on top of existing smaller products that are already working and successful, in other words, iterating, I think is an important part of how AI needs to get applied. And where we end up helping is we have solved a slew of problems that all customers have to solve. For example, role-based access control, we've solved it. If you have put data in Snowflake, we have probably walked you through who should have access to the data and who should not. The magic about building Snowflake intelligence on top of Snowflake data is that all of those access control restrictions are obeyed out of the box. It's not something new that you have to implement. If you want to scale your compute on Snowflake, we absolutely support that. If you want to use the best models on the planet with Snowflake, we've gone and done the partnership work in order to make that happen. We're also working on things like observability so that you can make sure that your AI solutions can be measured when they are deployed in production. By the way, standard software engineering. No one in their right mind these days is going to say, I'm going to launch a product to many thousand customers without making sure that there is observability that tells you, did the app just like crash and burn? Did it go down? And so we have all the right instincts, and the more we apply them, and the less we think of it as magic, the more successful we are going to be.
Before we move on, a quick message from our friends and partners at Vanta. Startups move fast, and with AI, they're shipping even faster. That means startups are attracting enterprise buyers even earlier, and the right kind of security can make a deal or break it. Vanta's AI and automation make it easy to meet buyer expectations in just days. Their technology continuously monitors your compliance so your deals are never blocked. With AI changing regulations, Vanta knows what's needed and when, and they've built the fastest and easiest path to get you there. Listeners of our show get a special $1,000 discount when they sign up. Just go to vanta.com/superhuman. That's VANTA.com/superhuman.
One thing I would love like your perspective is, which I think like Snowflake could be pretty well positioned for, is, one of the biggest challenges for these LLMs are because they're non-deterministic, they're stateless. You really need good memory and context, and then you need to retrieve the right information at the right time. So Snowflake, as you mentioned earlier, has the data of like majority of the customers who trust Snowflake as their go-to data warehousing system. You're now building the AI intelligence system. You have native apps capability, which allows developers to build products to access customer data in a secure way. How's Snowflake thinking about like all of this data for a customer? How do we enable products and applications who want to access this data at the right point, at the right moment? How do we retrieve it in a smart fashion? Maybe Cortex already does that. Like if you're trying to answer the aviation question, it's not a very trivial question to answer. You really need to know what to look for at what point, how to understand the context of that. And as you get more into complexity of these questions, things even get really crazy. And I'm just curious, like, how is Snowflake going to build these capabilities? And or maybe you're already working on them, or that's already built.
We're absolutely working on them, and we've been working on them for a very long time. Cortex Analyst is our structured data product, and built into it is something called a verified query repository. These are a list of questions and answers that have been vetted and approved by the data analysts and data scientists that know the data really well. By the way, this is an important concept, which is the human in the loop part of AI. The reason Google Search, for example, is such a great product is because there's a feedback loop. In search ads, for example, the ads that we would show on top were the ones that users liked. And it turns out that taking that click-through into account, taking conversion rate into account, leads to this positive feedback cycle. We think about AI products the same way, which is that there has to be input coming back into the product so that things can get better over time. And so with Snowflake Intelligence, there is this idea of what are questions that we know have been answered correctly. And the nice thing about this is if a user asks a very similar question, we can quickly recognize that this is part of a pattern and answer that a whole lot faster than going through an entire 60-second or 2-minute thinking loop, which, as you know, can be annoying to deal with. I don't mind that for complex questions like, hey, aviation industry customers. But on the other hand, if I ask a simple question, how much revenue did we make yesterday? I want that to be as instant as a dashboard. But the core concept very much is this semantic model. And part of the value that we bring to the table is we use all of the information that a customer has, whether it obviously the schema that they have in Snowflake, but also the previous queries that they have run on top of Snowflake, actual values from the data that there is. We are also making it easy to extract and import semantic information from other BI tools and store it very close to data so that anyone that is building these tools, including Snowflake Intelligence, can access it. This is how you stand on the shoulders of giants. And I see the world of data analysts going from one of writing long SQL queries to essentially describing the semantic context of data and how it should be accessed. So it's going to be highly leveraged work. And what comes as a result of that is that products like Snowflake Intelligence are so much better at answering a whole bunch of questions that you previously needed analysts for. But as you think about AI products, you very much need to be thinking about how do they get better over time. By the way, all of this context, we extract the right query, we show it as context into the model. We also make sure that your conversation context is stored in a place like Postgres or in Redis, and you extract that right portion and give it as context as you're solving new problems. There's a bunch of engineering that goes behind it. But this is part of what we solve out of the box because we have so much context about what a customer's been doing.
No, that's amazing. I think like your point about the data analyst is so critical, right? Like I think that in the next few months or maybe in the next 1 to 2 years, you really need the data systems for agents and humans to work together. Otherwise, you can't really have an autonomous agentic system because it will just act as like a day one of an intern. Like every day it just shows up and doesn't have any context from like previously, so it's not able to operate well.
and keeps making new mistakes, which is very painful.
100%. So Snowflake obviously has started building some first party applications as well. I think I saw internally you guys launched a sales one. What are some things you are doing to win the hearts of the developer community to encourage them to start building on Snowflake with native apps or other initiatives which are active?
Yeah. First of all, as you know, the word developer is very broad. There are tons of people that are data analysts that would call themselves developers. There are also data engineers that set up systems for data extraction, making sure that the data is clean and so on. Then there is data scientists who are typically seen as doing exploratory work. And then there are the true blue app developers that develop on top of Snowflake. So it's a bit of a broad spectrum. Let's assume for now that when we are talking about developers, you're talking about folks that are building applications on top of Snowflake. As you know, we launched a framework called Native Applications, which are very unique because they offer a way for developer data to be combined with customer data in a safe way. So, for example, S&P Global, which has many, many native apps, these apps have an amount of S&P data, but they can be given access to customer data, but in a controlled way so that only the app has access to the data and the data is never released to the maker of the app, to the makers of the app. This is similar to, let's say, a sandbox model that's on the iPhone. In the world of AI, these native apps are now a lot more interesting because you can write agentic applications. We have powerful functionality underneath native apps. We support a Kubernetes cluster that people can deploy containers into. What we need to do a better job is making it super easy for people to deploy applications within Snowflake. Streamlit is a rapid prototyping platform. It's written on top of Python. I've created many fun apps with it. But the initial deployment model was a little clunky because you were running it on warehouses, which are not quite the right setting. We have a new product that will make these Streamlit applications run on container services. It's basically a detail. It'll just be a whole lot more responsive. And we are working on how can you deploy other things like reactive apps in other frameworks into Snowflake just as easily. So stay tuned for more news on that front.
That's awesome. I'm a big fan of Streamlit. We use it internally to like prototype stuff as well. So makes it very easy and simple to do that. So Sridhar, like, would love to kind of like spend a few minutes on your leadership background and like your journey through your career because you've had a really amazing and remarkable career. So maybe starting from the start, you were a member of the technical staff at Bell Labs, a title which now has been brought back by all the other labs as well. And then you ended up at Google and you rose through the ranks, ending up as SVP of the ads business, which is the key business for Google. Then you started a startup and now you're the CEO of Snowflake. Through this kind of like 4 to 5 key moments, like what are some of the key decisions you made which have enabled you to kind of be successful and really have this amazing impact throughout your career?
There's a lot of luck in life. I am where I am because so many people, starting from my wonderful PhD advisor to my boss at Bell Labs, are people like, people at Google, whether it was the founders like Larry and Sergey or Alan and Jeff Huber, who used to head much of our engineering. They gave me opportunities. I think it is really important to have that humility. I see my job as making sure that I give opportunity to other folks. The two qualities that I like push myself to continuously get better at are drive and malleability. Like trying hard, working hard is a thing, and you get a lot done. The world is full of smart people that work insanely hard. They're the ones that are making a difference to the world. And I don't see my job as, something I do to make money. I see my job as my livelihood, something that I am really, really happy to do. This is why I'm perfectly happy working Saturday morning at 5 a.m. because I have time and I like doing what I do. So I think drive is very key. And the second part is malleability. We live in a world that is changing very rapidly. What was true 6 months ago is just not true today. I think that ability to adapt oneself, whether it is in personal things or in professional things, is another key characteristic that you need to that one needs to have. The final point I will say is too many people put limits on what they think they should know or what they think they should learn. And I have that problem as well. But the biggest quality that can help you is saying that you can be open to things. You can learn other things. What I can assure you now is if you point me to an area, there are many like areas that require physical skill that people that are grown up like me cannot really adapt, but that's not true of your brain. There are many, many areas where you can continue to learn. And so when I was at Google, for example, I was curious about business. I was curious about marketing. I was curious about how corp dev worked. And so that curiosity combined with drive and malleability just lets you get very, very far.
I think that's an amazing answer. Uh, Coming to your Snowflake journey, I remember when I was at Snowflake, like the Neva acquisition happened, and I saw your title on your LinkedIn, learning Snowflake. And then after a year in, like Frank announced he was leaving, and then you ended up becoming the CEO. How did that happen? I think on one of the podcasts you mentioned that was an accident. Just curious to know like what that story is.
I mean, the learning Snowflake was a little bit tongue in cheek, meaning, I was a snowflake and I was learning. I had lots to learn. And to be honest with you, those 6 months, yeah, I think it's 6 months, June through December, were a gift because I had so much time to learn. I wasn't dealing with teams. I had no reports, so I could meet a lot of customers. I could learn a lot. And honestly, when we joined Snowflake, I didn't think I was going to stay here for the long term. But being at the right place at the right time still matters a lot in life. And it turns out that 2023 was a time when there was a lot of disruption in the world of data and AI. And this is also a time in which Frank and the board felt that a more product first CEO would be very helpful for the company. Frank is a legend. And he clearly made Snowflake do things that people at Snowflake didn't think was possible. But, legends also have that clarity of thinking. And that's the thing that'll always strike you when you talk to Frank. You never have to worry about where he stands because he will tell you. And you'll always be shocked by how he cuts right to the heart of what matters in any given situation. And he was the one that pushed for this change to happen. And while I had a few options, I loved Snowflake. I'd met a lot of customers that absolutely loved Snowflake. And the world of data is where, honestly, my computer science journey started. My PhD thesis was, believe it or not, in IO efficient algorithms. And so I felt very much at home. And, it's been an amazing experience over the past now 18, 19 months being CEO at Snowflake. I cannot ask for a better job. I get up super excited every morning thinking we're going to get so much done.
That's amazing. Snowflake is growing and like rapidly evolving as well. So it's amazing to see the impact you're making. One thing as we were doing research around your previous interviews and like your story, I think you mentioned that there are two types of kind of engineers you've kind of talked about. Like one, the infrastructure engineers. I think there was focus on like what in Google days, and the fast moving AI engineers. So as CEO of Snowflake, to some extent, you have to lead both type of these personas because of the work Snowflake does. Uh, does it require you to have a very different style, or how do you encourage people to kind of evolve between them? Just love to hear your thoughts there.
Look, one of the most important qualities that a leader needs to have is empathy. And this goes far beyond engineering. You need many different skills in order to create a company like Snowflake. You need amazing people in HR. You need amazing people in finance. You need amazing people in engineering and product and sales. By the way, even within sales, there is often like this funny chasm between solution engineers and account executives. And really understanding what makes a particular group of people tick is the requirement for any leader of a large organization. And that's the approach that I take. Being an AI research scientist requires very different skills. You need to know what those skills are, and you need to make sure that you understand and appreciate people for their skills. And similarly, infrastructure engineers are a different breed. I've worked with many amazing infrastructure engineers. The ability, for example, for Jeff and Sanjay to think through a problem for days at a time, just scribbling on a whiteboard before they wrote a line of code, working through all of the issues. And then they would sit down and write code, and people would say, "Oh my God, this is poetry in motion." And it's a very different kind of personality. It's a very different kind of mindset. But you need all of these to be successful in a company. As I said, as a leader, job number one, empathy, understanding what makes different people tick. Job number two, by the way, is understanding that you have to work pretty hard to understand what excellence is in these different areas, because you need to hire the best people in each area. And without that understanding of what makes for excellence in an area, you cannot find the best people, and you certainly cannot motivate them.
So from your like, I think you mentioned this excellence piece. How do you kind of like recruit the best people for Snowflake, and how do you kind of retain them? I think like, especially in this disruptive world where you have Meta paying insane salaries to some of the best researchers, the world is evolving pretty fast on that front as well. So how does excellence is retained and coached?
First of all, you have to work pretty hard to, attract the best people. So we go through a very deliberate process. For most senior hires, I generally require that teams write a rubric for what are qualities we should all be looking for, and who is best positioned to talk to a particular candidate about these qualities. And how do we make sure, whether it is references with previous people that have worked with them, or by open, honest, but hard questioning, how do we make sure that they are the right candidate? Beyond that, when you have excellent people, look, Snowflake is lucky to be a fast growing company, to be a company that has substantial market capitalization, which means that stock is a very powerful currency. Also, we are not in the foundation model business. At some point, you also need to have humility about who we are. We tried to be in the foundation model business last year. We realized that we simply were not equipped to spend billions of dollars to train foundation models. We got out of it. To me, that humility is important for every company. Not everybody can do everything, and that has let us navigate this fast changing market really well. We are fortunate to be exceptionally competitive.
That's amazing to hear. So kind of talking a bit about like Snowflake's future vision and the product. So you have obviously lived through multiple tech cycles as well. And from that kind of experience, what do you think is, where does like the future hold in the next 5 years? Like, where is the puck going?
I mean, this is a particularly bad time to make predictions for 5 years,
Yeah.
because
Maybe
do the
12
math.
months. I think 12 months would be like a better, better because things are changing so fast.
I mean, like, do the math. If you were to be making 2025 predictions in 2020, you would get a whole bunch of things wrong, including what happened, for example, to the Google case. These are just really, life is very hard to predict right now. But what I feel confident about is the direction that we are headed in. We want to be that end-to-end data platform. What I tell people is we want to be there for data from inception to insight. That means, how do people run transactional systems on top of things like Postgres or Unistore, to how do people do data engineering effectively, to how do people run analytics and machine learning, and how do people get value with generative AI. That's a solid, beefy platform. I think being able to deliver on that vision at an ever increasing rate is the thing that is going to define our success as a company. There are lots of option value things. The world of applications might get disrupted. People might be writing lots more on top of Snowflake, but a lot of that is icing on the cake. We need to be the definitive data platform that there is. I think that is what is going to make us a big, strong, powerful company.
What do you think is like sci-fi today, which Snowflake would be able to do if this feature kind of like unfolds, like in your opinion?
For example, being able to say something to the effect of, hey, I would like to migrate data from this Teradata system over to Snowflake and move all my dashboards. Right now, projects like that can take 18 months and involve hundreds of people. And if we can reduce that to you have 6 to 10 people that are overseeing the process, but much of the actual work is done by AI agents, I think that would be pretty remarkable in terms of what it can deliver for us. On the other hand, I think what is difficult right now is things like process optimization. I think that will, for example, like how do you get access to a particular piece of data? How do you make sure that things are done well? How can you go and check permissions so that there are no extraneous problems? That there are many problems that are done by humans today, or in finance, should you pay an invoice or not? People go through a multi-day process when they have to pay large invoices. I think a lot of that stuff is going to become more and more humans as supervisors, but the underlying systems do more and more of the work. I actually don't think that's 5 years away. I think that's like 2-ish years away. And obviously, over a timeline like 5 years, there's a lot more that can happen with AI. We don't know when it's going to peak. I think that part is open. I wouldn't make 5-year predictions, but in 2 years, I feel very confident that a lot of business and personal workflows will just look very different.
And like agents will be running on top of Snowflake, collaborating to get like real outcomes for like end users.
What I tell people, like the agent application I really want is to be able to order an Uber on my iPhone, and when I get into the Uber, to send a text to my wife saying when I'm going to get home. But I just want to say that once.
Yeah. It's just like all autonomous and it just happens because that's
Just take care of it.
yeah, the context and all of those things are captured. So as Snowflake grows and like all of these things start happening and the pieces of the puzzle start coming together, the company will obviously go beyond its core mission of like just the data foundation, like, hey, like we're going to be the best data foundation company. And it's going to put you on, to some extent, a collision course with some other companies who may not be competitors today for you. How are you thinking about that journey? I'm sure there'll be few winners. Not everyone's going to win the new market as well.
This is a great question. I approach partnerships very, very sincerely. We have amazing partnerships with AWS, with Azure, and we're hoping for similar things with GCP. Similarly, we have great partnerships with Salesforce and ServiceNow. I know those folks really well. We collaborate very, very effectively together. I think the most important quality that I try to make sure that we bring to the table is this attitude of better together. With any large company, there are going to be areas of conflict. There's just no way to avoid. With Microsoft, for example, there will be a number of areas in which they would rather push Fabric than Snowflake. But there are many other customers where Azure plus Snowflake is a better answer. I think it is just having rules of engagement, working together with these companies, and approaching things from a position of humility, from a position of partnership, that I think defines great companies. It is really not a zero-sum game. And I think if anybody has shown this effectively, it is Satya at Microsoft that has taken the company from, being like this super aggressive company to one that competes just as hard, mind you, but one that is also collaborative where it needs to be. And companies like AWS have been exemplars in how they deploy partnerships as a massive force multiplier. These are the companies that I look up to in terms of what should we aspire to. Absolutely, there's going to be competition, but having that spirit of how do we create the right outcomes for our customers is the most important and durable quality that we need to have.
I think that's an amazing goal, like the durable outcomes for your customers. And I think you were at some MIT conference earlier this year, and you kind of talked about like redrawing the line between what software can do, and to some extent kind of talked about like how services companies and global integrators have had to rethink their strategy as well. Do you see a world like we earlier talked about, right? Like how data analysts would be a highly leveraged role. They will redraw the world as well. Do you see services companies have to completely redefine themselves, or is their business at threat? No, they just have to like refigure their strategy. What do you think the future holds?
100%. I think they have a hard problem in front of them. Their business model is effectively based on how many hours do they get to spend with the customer. The more hours they spend, the more money they make. I think that's a really dangerous business model in today's climate, where so much more can be done by a human with access to a coding agent. Let's face it, with Cloud Code, I can just get so much more work done in terms of actually playing with features, in terms of actually building useful things for myself than I have ever been able to do before. I think similar things are going to happen in the world of services and integrations. I think they need to very, very seriously think about what are their leverage points, what are unique pieces of expertise that they are able to bring to the table that is going to create value for customers. I think business as usual in the world of SIs is going to come to an end.
I think you mentioned like an interesting point, like outcome based pricing or outcome based type of situation. Snowflake obviously was the innovator for consumption based pricing, led the pack. How are you guys thinking about outcome based pricing as well? Like, what's your general philosophy there?
We do want to drive towards more outcome based work, not necessarily change our core business model. But at least for things like services, we want to be much more aggressive about driving business outcomes for customers. But I think the biggest demand right now and the biggest opportunity we see is in being able to offer services either by ourselves or with partners that are much more outcome based. Currently, as I said, it's a little too much of time and material based. I think that's the part that has to change pretty dramatically.
So Sridhar, like Snowflake obviously has made a huge impact for multiple customers. And it's very hard to pick one story. So I want to like kind of put it to you, like, is there like one story which is top of mind for you, which really shows the value of someone who was not on Snowflake, was already on Snowflake, leveraging some functionality, not all of it, and the after impact. And especially for like the non-technical audience who are hearing this podcast, so they can understand the impact Snowflake is making at businesses.
I'll give you a couple of examples. One is a little old, but is still pretty dramatic. Honeywell deployed Snowflake a few years ago. Their data used to be on this on-prem system. And by moving it to Snowflake, they were able to think about things like pricing optimization entirely differently. It just unlocked this world for them. And it made a dramatic difference to the business. There were many, 8, 9 zeros involved in how much optimization they were able to drive. That's an early example. Fidelity is another customer whose entire IT integration story changed dramatically with Snowflake sharing. Yes, that's also a feature that's been around for a while, but they basically went from doing IT integration projects to collaboration with partners being driven entirely by configuration. More recent example, I talked about S&P Global. Their unlock moment was realizing that native applications can now become native agentic platforms, where not only can they bring the data, but they can also bring thinking and logic in the same application and bring that to customer data as well. And I talked in our earnings call about how BlackRock has created a customer 360 for their um, like their wealth managers when they are talking to their customers about having access to everything that they know about a customer, so they can be up to date on customer needs live during a conversation. All of these were basically impossible to do before or conceive of before. And for every example that I've mentioned, there are 3,000 more that I didn't get a chance to talk about. I think it is having that impact with over 12,000 customers that we are very, very proud of day in and day out.
So you obviously work with a lot of customers. I'm sure you see a lot of them, maybe customers or non-customers, who sometimes make mistakes as thinking about AI adoption. What is like one common mistake you have seen? And what is some, instead, how do you kind of will advise them to avoid these mistakes? Maybe 3 or 5 questions everyone should be asking before they want to launch an AI initiative.
My biggest piece of advice is deconstruct AI. Don't think of it as a black box. It is a set of capabilities. Play with it, understand it, use it in your personal life. The more you demystify it, the easier it becomes. And then when it comes to thinking about AI projects, do not think large projects. Demand a set of small projects that can either illustrate or drive meaningful outcomes. This way, you build on strength, you build on previous work. As I said, too big to fail projects always fail. And it is an incremental approach that I very much recommend to all of our customers. And we have a platform that is very much tailored for that kind of incremental approach. People that are already on Snowflake can create and deliver value with AI remarkably easily. That's the benefit that Snowflake brings to all our customers.
So I want to move to like a wrap up, and we want to do some quick fire questions. You can take a few seconds on it, maybe up to a minute. But this is supposed to be a bit fun as well, also insightful for like folks who may not, will just be younger folks listening to this podcast and they just want to capture some advice and things they can think about. So the hardest lesson you've learned through your leadership journey through experience, which you could have not learned in the book or by someone giving you advice.
I'll say two things. First, it's about people and the relationship you have with them at a personal level. You can talk about big leadership and leadership training this and leadership training that and these skills and so on. But leadership is fundamentally a personal people exercise. That is really important to remember, to relate to people, to understand what makes them tick, and how to motivate them. I would say the second biggest lesson is it is often more important to admit failure, accept it, not get discouraged, and move on. Resilience, in my mind, is one of the most important qualities that any human, certainly a leader, needs to have.
I also was catching up with Chris Schall before this episode, and he mentioned you're like a big personal power user of like different AI products. So just want to know, like, what are some of your favorite ones right now, besides obviously Snowflake?
I use Snowflake Intelligence a lot, but I have a ChatGPT Pro subscription. I love deep research. I also use the agent product pretty often. I also, use ChatGPT to generate a lot of cartoons for me. I like having fun with that. It's very good. And I also have Cloud Code, which has become my go-to side gig programming tool. It's been pretty amazing. To be honest, I also have a Gemini Pro subscription, and its image editing capabilities. There's a recent project that they announced called, I think it's called Nano Banana. Its ability to manipulate images is just truly, truly remarkable. I think there are not enough hours in the day to take full advantage of these tools. It's pretty exhilarating.
So what do you love to do like when you're not working?
I'm a big fan of just personal fitness. So I spend a lot of time in the gym. I swim a lot. And just it also gives me peace of mind. And so, I would say that's a big thing. I love hanging out with my family and friends. Again, they are the most important things in my in my life. I have various little hobbies. I love music. I listen. I'm trying to get better at some kinds of music. I love doing puzzles. But my world is mostly occupied with my family, my job, and physical fitness. I honestly don't do that much else. I have a monkish life, but I'm pretty happy with it.
Advice for folks in their first 15 years of their career.
It goes back to what I said earlier, which is you need drive. Don't let people convince you that success can be achieved on the cheap. Yeah, but you really want to maximize that likelihood. So I would say drive, malleability, and then what I talked about, resilience. You are not defined by just your successes. You're smaller than your successes. On the other hand, you're not your failures either. And I think having that separation from both success and failure and understanding that you surpass both of them, there's more to you than either of these. Having that humility and resilience, I would say these are the qualities that'll keep you sane in this crazy changing world.